I was 12 years old when my older brother Lucas Bennett became the family legend. His project on renewable energy systems won the National Science Fair, complete with a polished presentation and professional diagrams. The governor handed him the award on stage while cameras flashed. Local news stations interviewed our family in our living room, asking my parents how it felt to raise such a gifted child. My father later hung Lucas's trophy in his office, placing it directly above his own PhD diploma from MIT, as if the two achievements belonged side by side. That same year, I entered the science fair too. My project focused on quantum entanglement patterns, something I had been obsessively reading about late at night, long after my parents thought I was asleep. I didn't win. I didn't even place. The judges told me my presentation was confusing and my methodology unclear. One of them suggested I choose simpler topics in the future. Afterward, my mother rested a hand on my shoulder and smiled gently. "Science isn't for everyone, sweetheart," she said. "You tried your best." Lucas went on to become exactly what my parents expected. He studied physics at Princeton, surrounded by classmates who came from elite prep schools and families who believed in him without question. On the other hand, attended a local state university. My father said anything else would be a waste of money on someone without natural aptitude. I earned a partial scholarship and worked 30 hours a week at the campus bookstore to cover the rest. "At least she's practical," my mother would say when relatives asked about my education. Not everyone can be a genius like Lucas. What no one seemed to notice was that by my sophomore year, I was taking graduate-level physics courses. My professors regularly stopped me after class, asking why I wasn't applying to more competitive programs, why I was hiding in a mid-state school while solving problems that challenged their PhD candidates. "Family reasons," I would say, brushing it off. The truth was simpler and harder to explain. My parents had already decided who I was. Lucas was the prodigy. I was the backup plan, the sensible one, the realistic one, the child whose dreams needed limits. Every compliment I received felt accidental, temporary, something that would be taken back once someone looked closer. So I kept my head down. I studied quietly. I worked late shifts. And I learned, very early, how to succeed without expecting anyone to notice. By my junior year, I had learned how to exist in the background. I attended classes, worked my shifts at a campus bookstore, and spent most nights alone in my small apartment solving physics problems no one had asked me to solve. It was easier that way. Expectations couldn't crush you if no one had any. Everything changed because of Professor Holloway. He taught my quantum mechanics course, a class notorious for breaking students halfway through the semester. One afternoon, as I packed my bag after lecture, he stopped me at the door. "Maya," he said, glancing at my last exam. "Wait a moment." I assumed I had made a mistake on a problem or misunderstood a concept. Instead, he studied me like I was a puzzle. "I've been teaching physics for 34 years, he said slowly. "I've seen thousands of students. Maybe 6 who think the way you do." I didn't know how to respond. "You don't just apply equations," he continued. "You see the system. You anticipate where the math is going before it gets there. That's rare." I shrugged. "I just work hard." "That's not it," he said. "Hard work doesn't create intuition like this. Why aren't you applying to top programs?" I laughed before I could stop myself. "That's not really an option." "Why not?" "My family," I said. "They've already invested in my brother. This is enough for me." Professor Holloway shook his head. "No, it isn't. You're limiting yourself for reasons that have nothing to do with your ability." He leaned against the desk and lowered his voice. You belong at places like Stanford, MIT, Caltech, institutions with resources equal to your mind. My parents would never support that, I said. Then do it without them. The words landed harder than he probably intended. I'm writing you a recommendation letter, he continued. A strong one. You're applying to Stanford's PhD program. Their quantum computing lab is unmatched, and you need to be there. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at the application portal on my laptop. My family didn't know. They would mock me if they did. Still, I filled out every section carefully. When the application asked about my research interests, I wrote about an idea I'd been quietly developing for years, a theoretical framework for stabilizing quantum states at room temperature. Every expert insisted it was impossible. The laws of physics, they said, made it unattainable. I thought they were wrong. I submitted the application just before midnight, closed my laptop, and went to bed expecting nothing. For the first time, I had chosen myself, without permission, without approval, and without a safety net. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was shelving textbooks at the campus bookstore. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I almost ignored it. I was used to spam, overdue reminders, and rejection letters. When I finally checked the screen, I had to read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Stanford University, PhD program admission decision. My hand started shaking as I stepped into the storage room and opened the message. I had been accepted with a full fellowship. They offered me a funded position in the quantum computing lab under Dr. Nathan Cole, one of the most respected physicists in the field. The stipend alone was more than my parents earned combined. I slid down against the wall, dizzy, laughing silently so no one would hear me cry. I called home that evening. My father answered. What is it? I got into Stanford, I said. PhD program. Full fellowship. There was a pause. Then a sharp exhale. Stanford for what? Quantum physics. That's ridiculous, he said immediately. You're not Stanford material. They must have made a mistake. They're paying me, I said quietly. Everything. Silence again. Then my mother's voice in the background. Let her try. She'll drop out in a semester and come home. Better she learns her limits now. I hung up without saying goodbye. I left for California 2 months later with 2 suitcases and a second-hand laptop. No farewell dinner. No proud send-off. My family treated it like a phase that would burn out quickly. Stanford was overwhelming. Everyone else seemed to belong there effortlessly. They spoke confidently about elite undergraduate programs, famous mentors, and research grants secured before they were 22. I was the state school student who worked retail, the one people assumed had been admitted to diversify the cohort. I didn't correct them. I was too busy surviving. The quantum computing lab focused on quantum coherence, keeping quantum states stable long enough to perform computations. The field was stuck. Quantum computers existed, but only at temperatures near absolute zero, requiring massive cooling systems. Room temperature quantum computing was considered science fiction. I thought it was an engineering problem waiting for the right theory. You're chasing a fantasy, one of the PhD students, Caleb, told me during my second year. Every physicist for 50 years has tried this. Maybe they're approaching it wrong, I said. He laughed. Sure. And you figured it out. I stopped discussing my research with him after that. Dr. Cole was different. He listened. When I explained my idea, Using thermal energy itself as a stabilizing feedback mechanism, he went quiet. It's unorthodox, he said finally. Possibly brilliant. Possibly nonsense. Let me try, I said. If you're wrong, he warned, you'll lose years of your PhD. And if I'm right? He smiled. Then you'll change the world. The next 3 years disappeared inside the lab. While other students published safely, built on established theories, and protected their careers, I chased an idea everyone else had already declared impossible. My days began before sunrise and often ended after midnight. I lived on vending machine coffee and half-forgotten meals, surrounded by whiteboards layered with equations only I still believed in. I failed 847 times. Each failure had its own flavor: unstable simulations, decoherent spikes, feedback loops that collapsed under thermal noise. Every breakdown forced me to rethink the assumptions the entire field took for granted. The problem wasn't heat itself. The problem was how we treated it. We fought thermal energy instead of learning how to use it. My family never asked what I was working on. When I called home, which became rarer every year, the conversation always returned to my brother Lucas. He had graduated from Princeton and was now doing his postdoctoral work at CERN, contributing to experiments on the Large Hadron Collider. My mother sent long group emails updating extended relatives on his latest publications, his conference talks, his growing reputation in physics. My name appeared as an afterthought. Maya is still at Stanford doing her student thing. My student thing was rewriting the rules of quantum mechanics in silence. One afternoon during my 4th year, the simulations finally held. I stared at the screen, convinced I had made a mistake. The math was clean. The feedback mechanism worked. Controlled thermal fluctuations were stabilizing quantum entanglement at room temperature. I ran the test again. Same result. Then again. I walked to Dr. Cole's office without knocking and placed my laptop on his desk. He stared at the equations for nearly an hour, checking and rechecking every line. If this works in practice, he said finally, his voice unsteady, this is Nobel-level work. This doesn't just advance the field. It rewrites it. The prototype took 8 months to build. We worked in secrecy. If word spread and we failed, my career would end before it began. Still, rumors leaked. Caleb made sure everyone knew I was wasting lab resources on science fiction. The day of the test, 3 senior physicists joined us, experts in quantum computing, thermodynamics, and experimental physics. They arrived expecting to witness a very expensive failure. I powered on the system. Room temperature. No cooling infrastructure. Just the quantum chip, my thermal framework, and the feedback loop I designed. The quantum state stabilized. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 30. The previous record was 0.003 seconds. We ran it for 5 full minutes before I shut it down. One professor dropped his coffee. That's impossible. It's physics, I said quietly. Just not the physics we're used to. Dr. Cole turned away, wiping his eyes. We need to publish immediately. We submitted the paper to Nature that same night. For 3 months, my life existed in a strange suspension. Peer review moved slowly, deliberately, as it always did for work that challenged decades of accepted physics. I couldn't tell anyone. I couldn't celebrate. Every day felt like waiting for an earthquake that might never come. During that time, I called home once. My brother Lucas answered. Maya, he said casually. Haven't heard from you in months. Still playing student at Stanford. I'm still here, I replied. Must be nice, he continued. I'm working 80-hour weeks at CERN. Real physics is demanding. Mom and Dad are coming to Geneva next month for my presentation to the European Physics Society. You should come if you can afford the ticket. It'll be good for you to see what high-level research actually looks like. I ended the call before I said something unforgivable. The paper published on a Thursday morning in October. By Thursday afternoon, my inbox held over 4,000 unread emails. Stanford's press office was overwhelmed with calls from every major news outlet. The physics community erupted into chaos. Some called it a miracle. Others called it heresy. No one ignored it. Friday morning, the corporate calls began. Google, Microsoft, Apple. They wanted licensing agreements, exclusive partnerships, anything that would secure access to the technology. The numbers sounded unreal, like typos. We are prepared to offer $3.4 billion for exclusive rights, a Microsoft executive said, his tone rehearsed and careful. With additional royalties that could exceed $10 billion over the next decade. Dr. Cole sat beside me, silent, ripping his coffee like it might anchor him to reality. Maya, he whispered after the call, you understand what this means, right? I just wanted to solve the problem, I said. By Monday, the bidding war reached $6.1 billion. A consortium of tech giants pooled resources to acquire the licensing rights. Stanford would receive a substantial portion. The lab would be funded for decades. My share was over $2 billion. I was 28 years old. The university scheduled a press conference for Tuesday afternoon. The auditorium overflowed with physicists, journalists, tech executives, and students packed into the aisles. Cameras flashed as Dean Harrison introduced me. Dr. Maya Bennett has achieved what the field of quantum physics believed impossible. Her work will transform computing, cryptography, and global communications. I stepped to the podium and explained the breakthrough in simple terms. The questions lasted 2 hours. A journalist asked, did anyone believe in this research early on? My undergraduate professor did, I said. And my advisor gave me the freedom to pursue what everyone else dismissed. What about your family? Another asked. They must be incredibly proud. I smiled politely. I haven't told them yet, I said. They don't really follow my work. That quote made headlines everywhere. My phone started ringing that evening. I didn't answer. The missed calls piled up, my parents' number, again and again. Then came the emails. Maya, we saw the news. Call us immediately. We're so proud of you. I ignored all of it. The next morning, I appeared on national television. The host asked about my family, and for the first time, I told the truth. They didn't think I was capable of real science, I said calmly. My brother was always the genius. I was the practical one. They told me not to apply to Stanford because I'd embarrass myself. So I didn't tell them when I succeeded. The interview went viral. 2 days later, my parents showed up at Stanford. Security called my lab. They're insisting they need to see you. They say it's urgent family business. I sighed. Send them to the coffee shop across from the physics building. I'll meet them in an hour. I arrived 90 minutes later. They sat stiffly at a corner table, looking uncomfortable among the students and faculty. My father stood when he saw me. Maya, he said, forcing a smile. We've been trying to reach you. I've been busy, I replied. Patent filings. Press interviews. Negotiating billion-dollar contracts. You know, things I wasn't smart enough to handle. My mother winced. We never said that, she whispered. You said it many times, I said evenly. You say I'd embarrass myself. You say I was pretending to understand physics. You told relatives I was playing student while Lucas did real research. We were trying to protect you, my father said. From what? I asked. From succeeding without your permission. His jaw tightened. We're your parents. We deserve respect. You're people who share my DNA, I said. You didn't earn respect through your parenting. You taught me doubt. And I learned to live without you. My mother's voice shook. We supported you. We paid for your education. You paid part of it, after calling it a waste. I worked 30 hours a week to cover the rest. Meanwhile, Lucas had everything funded because his education was an investment. Mine was charity. We're proud of you now, my father said quietly. Can't that be enough? Proud of what? I asked. The money. The headlines. You weren't proud of the person who failed 800 times and kept going. You're impressed now because it's impossible to ignore. My mother wiped her eyes. What do you want from us? Nothing, I said. I needed your belief when I was 17. I don't need it at 28. As I stood to leave, she said softly, Lucas wants to talk to you. I paused. Tell him I'm not interested, I said. He's not my family. He's just someone who benefited from my silence. I walked out without looking back.